I want to talk to you a little bit about the last book of the Torah. This Torah portion is Parashat Devarim. We are entering the book of Devarim, and Devarim is the Hebrew term for Deuteronomy. We've made it through 4 books again. We're in the home stretch, which means, of course, that high holy days are coming. But I don't want to talk about that. Let's talk about Devarim, the last book of the Torah. So here's what's happening. All of these ancient Israelites, they've made it to the land. They are at the border. Imagine them surrounding themselves with each other at the border of the Jordan River, ready to enter. But Deuteronomy, this is a second telling. This is a reminder of everything that God and Moses have shared in the first few books before they enter into the land. Because once they get into the land, they're going to need a constitution. And so they're reminding everybody of all of the different important things that have happened. So the 10 Commandments are going to be shared again. And there's a lot of repetition, but some things are going to be new. At the very beginning of the Torah portion, when we see that they're about to enter, there's a retracing of the steps. They tell us where folks have been, what were the major cities, where are they remembering where they journeyed. And it also, Moses in this retelling is also telling them where they missed the mark. They're going to share a story that happened that we read some weeks ago, where they make it to the land, the border, 40 years prior. And there are scouts that go out, 12 scouts representing the 12 tribes. And 10 of them come back saying, oh, we can't go there. We can't go into this land. We know that God said we should, but we can't go there. The people there are giants. And everything they have there is gigantic. The food is big. The buildings are big. Even, just to remind you, there is an example of how they were carrying a cluster of grapes. And those cluster of grapes was so massive, they had to hold it on 2 pieces of wood. Some of you know the image. You have seen it before. The Ministry of Tourism for Israel has these grapes. Now, this is a very fancy image that they've recently redone. But these grapes were as big as the people. So they were all afraid of entering. They didn't think they could handle it. And the consequence for their lack of faith, their lack of trust in God, no matter what God did beforehand, their lack of confidence, was that these folks who were liberated from Egyptian slavery, they weren't allowed to enter into the land. A new generation needed to be born free, and they are going to be the ones that enter the land. So in this Torah portion, Moses is telling to these folks 40 years later about what they're going to be able to do. And as they enter into this land, God makes it very clear. There's a few tribes in the area. Don't attack. Don't go near them. Respect their boundaries, and the Israelites will. That is what happens. So there's a retracing of the cities they've been to. There's a reminder of what happened when that earlier generation of Israelites saw giants, and they were too afraid and thought that they looked like grasshoppers. God says, go into this land, but leave those certain tribes alone. But there is going to be, in chapter 3 of the book of Deuteronomy, there is going to be a battle. And it says in the text that they are moving up the road toward Bashan, and the king Og, that's his name, King Og of Bashan, and all of his men are in the field, and they're ready to fight the Israelites. And God says to Moses and the people of Israel, don't be afraid. This is something that needs to be done. Only King Og of Bashan was left after this battle. And it says in the text that his bed was an iron bed. It was 9 cubits long and 4 cubits wide. A cubit, by the way, is like the length of your forearm. And why am I saying this? If a forearm is about a foot and a half, this guy's bed was approximately 13 and a half feet by 6 feet, which meant that He was enormous. This was a giant. Remember I said earlier, 40 years prior, those Israelites leaving Egyptian slavery thought they were giants in the land and they couldn't go. They were too afraid. And now, at the very end of the Torah, the people that are born free and they've heard God say, don't be afraid, I'm going to be with you. They're going and fighting, and they won against King Og of Bashan, who seems to be another giant. So what does this tell me? What is it that I want to share with you? I'm not convinced we'll ever find archaeological evidence of what happened here. And it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't. The truth is not whether or not these events happened. The truth is that sometimes you and I, we have to fight giants. That's the truth. We have to go to battle sometimes. I'm going to invite you to put into the chat. Who do you think is a giant that you need to, no names, but who is a giant? What is a giant that you need to fight? I'm going to give you a couple of examples so that you can think about it. I think there are giants like all of those isms we talk about. I think there's anti-Semitism and racism. I think there's sexism and misogyny. There's xenophobia, the fear of others, whether they're immigrants or people of Asian descent, Jews or others. I think there are people who fall in love and are hated for it. So whether it's anti-LGBT folks, or it's going to be our own pride. I saw that in the chat. Our own egos sometimes can lead us down bad paths. I think it could be depression that we have to fight somehow. It could be addiction. It could be cancers, and it could be COVID-19. I think there are giants out there that we have to confront. And yeah, we turn them into idols. We turn them into things that seem so important, but are really distractions for who we really are supposed to be. I think that there's a lot of people in our community who have a sense of moral injury by watching everything around us and be pained by it, and it leads us to feel powerless. When we have enough grief and we have enough loneliness or frustration and anger, whatever it is, you name it, it's so easy to feel powerless, but I don't think that it's true. I really don't. In some ways, we are like the Israelites shortly after leaving Egypt, not being prepared to go into battle because their faith wasn't really ready. But in our Torah portion, this week's Torah portion, they go. They were ready to fight. So what's the difference? God was with them in both scenarios. God said, I had your back in both scenarios. But it's only the people that we read about in Deuteronomy that actually own that. They know that they are not alone. And the folks who are wounded by slavery and trauma, they couldn't see. They couldn't see that they weren't alone and that they were being supported. And I think we often fall into that same space, that we don't feel like we're actually being supported. So I'm here to say, and I know this isn't going to be a shocker for you, this God thing, it's real for me. And I'm not expecting God to change my reality. I'm expecting God to help me find the strength that God gave me. Not just to carry on, but to find my power to go into battle against my giants. And yeah, it's not just societal. It's not just the stuff that's out there that's making us crazy. I have my own giants to fight. and I've been fighting them for decades, whatever they might be. But I know that I can fight them better and more confidently with the community around me. I know that I can fight giants better knowing that God is real and has never left me alone. Not to protect me from harm. I actually don't think that God can do that. And if you do, then more power to you. I think God's presence helps me face whatever I need to. Whatever I need to. So whether it's pride and injustice and intolerance, it's all of the isms. There are giants in our lives and in our world, and yeah, they can be fought. So we take a deep breath and we do our part. So whether you are young or not so young, remember this. You haven't lived through a pandemic before. This is new territory for all of us. So be gentle. Be forgiving of yourselves, of the people, if you live with somebody, of the people that you live with, because by now they're probably getting on your nerves. Be gentle and kind to folks that you don't necessarily know. And prepare ourselves for the real battles, whether it's what is holding me back on the inside or the broken pieces of our world. And if we can help you find God's presence so you can go into battle, I'm up for it. The clergy here, we're all up for it. We can do that for one another. You don't even need me. We can do that for each other. If we can accompany you, we'll do our best to try so that we can do the work, because there's always work to do. And the work is to make our lives better, our world safer, and more meaningful. So, yes, there might be giants out there, which was a great band, by the way. But you, and even me, we are a reflection of God's creation, a reflection of God's love and goodness, which means that you have incredible power and strength. So my hope and prayer for you and for me is that we get to tap into those reservoirs. And I know there's been a lot of tapping into it recently, but keep going into it. Find your nourishment, find your strength, and be prepared to fight some giants. I think that's what we have to do sometimes. So I wish you well, and I wish you strength. And I look forward to hearing what that might mean for you.